What's up, everybody? This is Mario, and I'm back with another episode of Talking Endurance and Mastery. And today is October 4th, which means I am now 11 days away from 29029 Everesting. And we just had our last Zoom call as a group before the training, and they went through three different things that I'm going to talk about today as we're getting closer to the big event. I'm getting super pumped and just want to do kind of an informational type of episode and podcast to share the three things that they were talking about on today's call. So I'm going to roll the trailer and then we're going to get into it. Do you want to complete an endurance event and elevate all areas of your life, but you don't know where to start? Then you're in the right place. Talking Endurance and Mastery is a podcast to help you create a vision and take steps towards your goals and dreams. I'm your coach, Mario Minner. I've completed events like Ironmans and ultramarathons, but I believe the true benefit from endurance events is how they help you become the best version of yourself. Join me as I share stories, lessons, and interview guests to help you apply endurance and mastery principles into every area of your life. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, so I am 11 days away from 29029 Everesting, and I'm starting to get really excited. And like I've mentioned on the podcast, as part of signing up for this event, I get a training plan and there's Zoom calls every 2 weeks. And I've been doing that for the past 20 weeks. And we just had our last Zoom call today to get us ready for the event. And they started to talk through a couple of different things that I wanted to share with all of you today. So, first of all, the people on the call, one was Brent Peace. He's an endurance coach. He's an Ironman finisher. He is an awesome coach. He really knows his stuff. And then there were two other individuals. One, her name is Emily Wise. She's a nutrition coach, and she was talking about all of the important information that you need to know with nutrition and calories and all of those things. And then there was also another coach on there. His name is Chris Hoff. He is also an endurance and kind of mindset coach. And between the three of them and another member of the team, they were kind of fielding just last minute questions and talking through the last few weeks of training and different things like that. But there was a lot of really good information, but there were kind of three main areas that they talked about that I wanted to share with all of you today. Because once you get to a couple of weeks out from an endurance event, this is now the part where people start to get nervous. You start to think, did I even train enough? Did I train too much? Am I actually ready for this? And so the first thing that they talked about was training. So I mentioned that there's a training plan, and I've shared a couple of episodes on training plans and what that looks like preparing for Everesting. But Brent, who's the coach, he really emphasized that these next 2 weeks are kind of all about rest. And you can't treat it like cramming for an exam where you wait until the last day or a couple days before and you do a bunch of studying, or you go for a bunch of long runs or intense runs. Your body, if you've put in the work consistently, your body is actually ready. And these next couple of weeks is really all about resting and making sure that you are feeling fresh for that event. And so he kept talking about how to get yourself fresh for the event and making sure that you're taking time to rest. And he talked about how the Olympic triathletes, he was following them for a little bit, and how he noticed like how slowly they would walk from one event to the other, or how quickly they would try and find a chair in between different events. And they did this to try and conserve their energy, try and keep their bodies fresh. And he was just really pushing that same message for all of us today on the call. One other thing that he started to talk about is since the amount of training and the number of hours is going down, a lot of people try and do a little bit more hip and mobility work over the next couple of weeks, just to get your hips nice and loose, but also strong for all of that hiking. And so, training, it's not about putting in high intensity, long intervals, long events, and long training runs. It's really more about rest, and it's all about how can you keep your body fresh. So that was one of the main areas that they talked through. Now, another area that they talked through was strategy. Now, with an event like this, it's really important that you have a strategy for being successful, because you need to get up the mountain. You need to factor in the gondola on the ride down. You need to factor putting enough calories in your body. You need to factor in getting meals like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You need to factor in sleep. You need to factor in recovery. And you need to give yourself some buffer time in order to be successful with that. So they started to talk through what different strategies we could employ or use in the event. And the actual amount of time that it takes to get up the mountain obviously varies based on your fitness level, but it's anywhere from 50 to 75 minutes, and or actually it's 50 to about 90 minutes. And so if you're really fast, you can get up the mountain in about 40 to 50 minutes. If you're going a little bit slower, it might be anywhere from 75 to 90 minutes, and also need to factor in that 15-minute gondola ride. And so they started to talk about how some people come with like a detailed spreadsheet of, kind of broken down by the minutes, broken down by, like actual minutes and seconds as to what they're going to do at each moment in time. Other people show up and just kind of have this mentality of, I just want to get the first one done and then come up with a plan after that. Now, I've been talking with my friend Joey, who's going to be doing this event with me, and we've kind of created a rough outline. And we know that out of the 17 summits, we want to do 13 of them in the first day. And what we would like to do is try and get our hikes done in around 45 to 50 minutes. Give ourselves, 15 minutes for the gondola where we'll be eating and, kind of reloading with our calories, and then have 5 to 10 minutes after that as just kind of a buffer, kind of, adjusting our clothes, or, getting loose, and then heading back up the mountain. And we have a plan kind of put in place to where we can take breaks to make sure that we're getting lunch and dinner and just a couple of hours of sleep so that we can finish those last four ascents on the second day. And one other factor that we also included as part of our plan is we want to do some night hikes, because it's something that I've talked about on this podcast, and other people who have done it have recommended that you do a night hike just because of that experience of only, just having the pitch black and only being able to see the first, those few steps right in front of you. And so ours isn't broken down, super detailed, but it does have a pretty good structure in place of what we're going to do and how we're going to be successful. And so I think that's definitely in line with what they were talking about today is, if you're the type of person who's really detailed, come with that broken down strategy. If you're the type of person who just wants to be a little bit more flexible, then get that first ascent done and then adjust from there. One other strategy that they talked about was finding a hiking buddy or an accountability plan, and kind of use somebody else as that hiking buddy or as that person who can hold you accountable. Now, I'm lucky, I'm going to have my best friend there, and we're going to be doing this together as a duo and as a team. But I just wanted to share that as another thing that they kind of recommended to the group. So, first thing that they really pushed through and talked through was training these next couple of weeks. Second thing was strategy, making sure that you have a plan, or that you're at least thinking about that strategy. Then the third thing that they talked about was clothing and gear. And um, they did look at the weather and made a big deal about making sure that we're looking at the weather and kind of the forecast before we're packing our gear. But they talked about bringing extra pairs of shoes, extra pairs of socks, and bringing multiple layers and making sure that you have a good quality kind of base layer because when you're out there for 36 hours you're going to get sweaty, it's going to get warm, and you're going to want to adjust your clothing, shoes, socks, all of those things. And they started to talk about how with a lot of endurance events, when you're preparing to bring your clothing, it's just really good to bring extra options because it's better to have more options than less. You don't want to like wish you would have brought an extra pair of socks or an extra pair of gloves or different things like that. So they talked about clothing. They also talked about hiking poles. So this is something I have used hiking poles when I did a 4-day, 28-mile hike in the Grand Canyon. So I'm somewhat familiar with them. Really haven't used them too much besides that, but they were kind of giving some instructions on how to properly use hiking poles, how to make sure that you're using that to save energy. So that was another thing that they talked about in the call. And so those were kind of the big three things that they talked about in the last Zoom call before 29029, before Everesting. They talked about training, they talked about strategy, and they talked about gear and clothing. And a lot of you have been just kind of curious about this Everesting event. And I just wanted to share those three things and share those takeaways from that Zoom call. And as I bring it back to you, I think that these three things that I'm talking about, training, strategy, and gear or clothing, these are the types of things that you're going to want to think about with any type of endurance event that you're taking on. It doesn't matter if it's a 5K, a 10K, a half Ironman, a full Ironman, this big, Everesting event. Training, strategy, clothing, and gear. Those are kind of three core fundamental things that you're going to want to think about with any type of endurance event. And as I bring it back to you and I think about your goals, just want to ask you, how are you doing with training? How are you doing with your strategy and your plan to get there? Or how are you doing with the gear and the clothing that you need in order to be successful? Just a question that I have for you today. And that, my friends, is what I have for you today. I'm 11 days away. I'm getting super pumped and I can't wait to just get a little bit closer to this event, experience it, and then share it with all of you and just share the growth and the transformation that I believe will occur from taking on something like this. This is going to be unlike anything that I've ever done before, and that's exactly why I'm doing it, because I really think it's going to challenge me. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to learn and grow from it, and that's ultimately why I take on these challenges. So. That's my message for today. If you found any sort of value in it, please consider leaving a 5-star review. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all later.